Live from the Morongo Casino Studios, it's the Heidi and Frank Show on 95.5 KLOS and KLOS HD1.
Los Angeles.
Heidi and Frank Show. Christian Hand is with us in the studio. He's going to break down a rock song for us.
Morning, y'all.
Or a song.
We're going to go with, after last week, we're going to bring it back to something that's in format so that our program director doesn't have to die of an aneurysm in his office. The great. One of the guys that managed to continually reinvent himself from generation to generation. This is actually my favorite period of his, and unfortunately, according to reports from the Bowie camp, his least favorite period of his career, which is he wasn't a big fan of his output in the 80s, which is disappointing because it's amazing, especially this record, which is, of course, Let's Dance from 1983, produced by the great Nile Rodgers of Chic fame, responsible for selling, Nile is responsible for selling 500 million albums total. It's mixed by the inestimably brilliant Bob Clearmountain, whose name we've heard a bunch of times, L.A. native. This album sold 11 million records. The song started as a pretty dark-sounding two-chord, more folky pattern that Bowie played Nile on a 12-string with 6 strings on it. Rogers said, "That's cool, but can I maybe mess around with it a little bit?" And Davey was like, "Of course." And so he moved the chords around, inverted them, and added upstrokes. Very little work, of course. Anyone could do that.
That's what I was just thinking about.
Like, who hasn't done that?
Right.
In fact, there's an amazing YouTube video. I think if you put into the search bar Nile Rodgers Let's Dance, he shows you what David originally played him, which was much folkier. And then he goes, and then I just did this and this and this. And you're like, well, that is the then that makes you Nile Rodgers, for crying out loud. But it's really cool to see the way he changed the song. And then, of course, on this song, the great Stevie Ray Vaughan plays the lead. And he had met Stevie at the 1982 Montreux Jazz Festival. They talked for hours about SRV's music. And then Bowie mentioned something about him coming to record with him, and Stevie was like, yeah, I guess, and then he hunted him down and put him onto the track. The album took 17 days in total to record, which is bonkers when you realize it also had China Girl and Modern Love, which were huge MTV smashes at the time. On drums, the great Omar Hakim, with a Bob Clearmountain mixed drum set, which is just going to be smashy-bashy. Man, I miss that 80s drum sound. Happy belated birthday to Uncle Phil Collins, whose birthday was yesterday. Groove. Great little delay added to the snare to give it some extra movement. Nice big build going to the chorus. No joke. No joke on the old drums is our Omar. Then there's a chorus build too. Not a lot of fills, but a lot of grace. Ooh, man, that is dirty. I got to tour with Omar Hakim. Lovely chap. He was filling in for Manu Katché on Peter Gabriel tour. That's how many names you can drop in one radio segment. You try really hard.
Huh.
Yeah, pretty good.
Impressive.
I get name drop miles. I just earned myself 4 packs of Marlboro Lights. So the keyboard bass is Erdal Kizlicke, and I knew you thought that. You were like, is this going to be Erdal's
Erdal?
work?
Yeah,
It is
Erdal.
Erdal's work, in fact. But the regular bass is played by Carmine Rojas. So we get a lovely switch between the two. We start with a real bass, and then we switch to that. So you got bass and key bass.
Fat.
Yes. Booze. Man, that delay is so good on the snare. Groove. When you think about it, this is the same dude that did Space Oddity. It's the same guy that did Moon Age Daydream. It's just incredible. Fame, you know, like all of the 70s era stuff. the switch in the build. And then fatness. So smart. These people's brains had brains. Which is, I'm telling you, it's even when you watch the YouTube video and you realize the work that Nile Rodgers did to get this song from this real, honestly, like a dark-sounding folk song to this dance smash that filled the airwaves in 1983 and MTV. It just goes to show the genius that is Nile Rodgers. You don't sell 500 million records if you're not very good at the job.
It's a synth bass
Yep.
and a real bass
Yep.
played at the same time.
Yep.
Do bassists ever use pedals for sounds? Where it's like you can make it sound like
These are
both
excellent
together?
questions.
I don't know. I've never seen that before. As far as,
One of the dudes who did that specifically is a gentleman by the name of Geddy Lee from Rush, who played bass and then had Taurus pedals that he would then play. But then Geddy also played synths, so he would play bass with his left hand on the fret, and then he would play bass keys with his feet,
Jesus.
and then he would play. And then he would play keys leads with his right hand, and then he would sing. But all of those things are in different feels.
like your breakdown, like doing something over here, doing something
Yeah.
over here, doing something with his feet, doing
With,
something.
and then singing, "And not me worry of me," and you're like, well, how are you doing that? It's unbelievable. Yeah, truly. Yeah. So this is the. But the genius of it is that it's perfectly matched. So you can't really tell where one ends and the other one begins. And it just adds, if you listen to the bass on its own, it doesn't have the same sort of bottom end. But you kind of, you want to have that lower rumble, and of course it's Bob Clearmountain. Just gives you a different texture, so the verse feels different to the choruses. It's very smart choices. On guitar, Nile Rodgers, of course, because why wouldn't he? So this is also has the horns section on it, which is we all know it. And the delay makes one sound out of that guitar. It's so good. There he is. So, like, drunken sounding. It's great. And put the bass in with it. The whole thing just moves. Keys by Bob Sabino. Nuanced, the subtle choices. And the way it all Tetrises together. Throw the drums in. Spaces. It's less is more. So there's this really great little Stevie Ray moment here. That's his first appearance. And then, of course, later on, at the end of it, for the coda, we have this, which is so brilliant. Rest in peace, Stevie Ray Vaughan. That's some real Texas. That's some real
Boy,
Texas
I
twang.
love
It's
that.
so good. This section right here. And by all accounts, when the calluses used to sort of break off at the end of his fingers, he would just put super glue under and super glue them back on. So like the tips of his fingers were like these, they were like solid pads, which is how you get all of that because it's not human flesh.
It's like dog pads.
Yeah,
aren't they?
like literally dog pads.
Was that something to play the track on loop and just let him do those fill riffs? And then they kind of like, let's patch up him with this one. This is great. And just let him just go for it?
It said that it was a couple takes, so it's quite possible that it would have been comped together, but I can't imagine that. I mean, possibly. That'd be a great question to ask Niall, would be like whether he played that all the way through and they just sort of built it each take. He went from, sort of like learned the motif that he wanted to utilize, or if they took a bunch of takes and just comped it together, as we call it in the beeswax. I would think that you would let Stevie Ray just go.
Yeah.
And then or just like find the one that is your expression of yourself, because they're beautifully linked. Like, it doesn't sound like there's cuts. He's the sort of player where if you listen to like the headphone feed in the background, it doesn't ever cut out. It always seems to be the same thing flowing. So I would imagine that they would have just let him go. I mean, he's not the sort of player where you're like, we'll fix that in post. It's Stevie Ray. We'll just if he gets close, we'll just make it. It's not a big deal. And then there's of course the extras track, which always has little secrets buried in it, and this one has some good old. It's Sammy Figueroa, who has shown up on a.
What is this?
These are little wood sticks. Claves, which are like two. With lots of delay.
Yeah, lots of delay on that.
It just creates that.
Every delay is panning through your headphones.
It goes.
Yeah, it goes through your head. From
Bob Clearmountain doing the best. You can just let the song do this for 5 minutes. Once again, the headphone experience. Amazing. So many. I mean, Bob Clearmountain started. I didn't realize until I did Chic in the chat on Instagram, and Nile Rodgers actually showed up, and I was like, "Who was your engineer?" And he was like, "Bob Clearmountain." So Bob Clearmountain was engineering for Nile Rodgers in the '70s, doing the Chic records, and is still mixing hits to this day, and is just one of the monsters. So in this track, you also have the extra little Stevie Ray in the background. And then in the ending, some of this. Sick. What a groove. That's why you hire him. And then the ending. This whole stack. Sort of accept it now. It's like, oh yeah, it's Less Than by David Bowie. But if you think about it, you've got the guy that pretty much puts disco on the map as far as becoming a world movement. And then you've got David Bowie, who's one of the foundational creative forces of modern music. And then you have Stevie Ray Vaughan all together on one song, and it works. It could have been a total and complete disaster. And once again, I urge you to go and listen to or watch the little YouTube clip, because then you realize just how incredible Nile Rodgers' knowledge of it. And I encourage this, a great podcast called The Rock on Tours, which is Guy Pratt, who's one of the sort of secret weapon bass players of all time, and Gary Kemp, who was from a band called Spandau Ballet that did that. I know this much is true. Anyway, they have guests all the time. It
Nailed
sounds
it.
just like that. They have guests that are really great, and the Nile Rodgers episode is so cool because he talks about Bernard Edwards, who was his creative partner in Chic, who they worked together for years. And then the crazy thing about the way Bernard died is they had a show in Japan they went to, and Bernard was feeling sick and went. And his last words to Niall were, "I just feel tired. I'm going to go back and lay down." He went to the hotel room and he passed away in the
you
hotel
hear
room.
so much of that when people say I don't feel good.
Yeah, and they just went, and so their relationship is really beautiful and so specific. And he talks about that on this podcast.
Say
So anyway,
it again,
check
what
out
the name of the podcast is.
It's called the Rock on Tours.
Rock on Tours,
and it's the guests. They start with Nick Mason. They go through everybody, and it's a really, really, really cool podcast. If you're a music head, it's mandatory listening. The horns, by the way, are Mac Gellahan, Robert Aaron, Stan Harrison, and Steve Elson, and then of course the Thin White Duke going through his sexy stage in the 80s. I don't think there was anybody cooler. Maybe Robert Palmer was like up there as well in the cool front, but David Bowie was hard to beat. So this is David Bowie's Let's Dance. 11 million records, and if you came up in the 80s, you couldn't escape this song.
Let's dance. Put on your red shoes and dance the blues. Let's dance to the song they're playing on the radio. Let's sway while color lights up your face. Let's sway. Sway through the crowd to an empty space. If you say run, I'll run with you. And if you say hide, we'll hide. Because my love for you would break my heart in two. If you should fall into my arms, tremble like a flower. Let's dance.
Sounds like the guy from B-52s.
Let's dance.
Fred Schneider.
Yes.
Let's dance. For fear your grace should fall. Let's dance. For fear tonight is all. Let's sway. You could look into my eyes.
I mean,
Let's sway. Under the moonlight, this serious moonlight.
I mean, the fact that he can go from this
For fear your grace should fall.
to this.
Under the moonlight, this serious moonlight. And if you say run, I'll run with you. And if you say hide, we'll hide. Because my love for you would break my heart in two. If you should fall into my arms and tremble like a flower. Put on your red shoes and dance the blues.
So I was really bummed out when I found out that David wasn't that into this era of his music because it's my favorite era of his stuff because the creativity of it to me is the voices that he's bringing in and all the other people that are involved is just unbelievable. Stevie. And if you haven't listened to the last record that he made, you should. It's no joke as a record. And when he was making it, nobody else in the organization knew that he was dying. He didn't tell anyone. They were just making a record. and he was the only one that knew it was the last record that he was going to make. So when you listen to it, it's a gorgeous, beautiful, like final statement of a truly creative genius. So check out Let's Dance. Check out I forget the name of the last record. Lazarus, I think was the name of it. It was Lazarus or something. But check that out. There, obviously, David Bowie is hugely significant and incredibly important, as is Nile Rodgers. So thanks to both of them for all of the music. You can join me on Instagram at the Session IG Live. I'm doing them every day at 6 p.m. I'm going to start doing a couple at 11 a.m. because I'm getting ready for my trip to England. I'm going to do some shows in the UK if I don't catch Omicron and die over there. And then also the Prince show with Wendy. If you bought tickets to the previous date, they're being honored on March 1st. It's going to be awesome. We're shooting it for the TV thing and the whole 9 yards. We're going to have a purple celebration at the Regent downtown. And I think there are tickets available because some people had to cancel from the last thing. So check out the Session website for all the information for that. And I'll see you on the Session IG Live for live Instagram sessions every day there.
Thank you, Christian.
You're welcome.
Always good times.
It is a fun hang. Whenever I see you go live, I'm like, I'm gonna check it out.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's the other night we did like 2.5 hours on El DeBarge's Rhythm of the Night, which was one that we didn't think was going to take 2.5 hours. I'll tell you that right now. It was awesome. I was like, how is this taking? This is longer than a Marvel movie. For El DeBarge's Rhythm of the Night. What is going on here? That's the one that you think would be like you'd be like, 45 minutes and you're out. I'm like, by the 2-hour mark, and I'm like, we still haven't done the vocals. This is ridiculous, everybody. So go and check it out.
We're going to take a quick break. Come right back. We're Heidi and Frank.